Diplomacy based on idealism has brought the EU to a dead end, Nihon Keizai writes. According to the author of the article, the conflicts in Ukraine, and especially in Israel, have proved the old continent's powerlessness, and now a frightening sense of uncertainty is spreading in Europe. The Middle East has once again been shaken by the attack on Israel by the Islamic movement Hamas, which effectively controls the Palestinian territory of the Gaza Strip. Thus, following Ukraine, military clashes began in geographically close Israel. Europe has been defeated into conflicts and is now preparing for increased geopolitical risks. Israel has the right to defend itself, said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. We will give Israel every support, said British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Old continent leaders have criticized Hamas's actions, including indiscriminate strikes on civilians. There are two reasons why Europe, which previously disapproved of Benjamin Netanyahu's reform to weaken the power of the courts and expand Jewish settlements, has changed course and backed Israel. Firstly, a stage has arrived that requires the unity of the democratic camp in confronting powerful states such as Russia and China. At the same time, the EU is trying to avoid disagreements with Washington, which supports Tel Aviv, as much as possible. Second, Europe has a murky past associated with Israel behind it. In particular, Germany, the leader of the old continent, is guilty of the mass extermination of Jews during World War II. Chancellor Olaf Scholz once said in 2022, the German government is eternally responsible for the security of the State of Israel. This is an accepted principle of German politicians, regardless of party affiliation. Hamas's methods of bringing civilians into the conflict cannot be tolerated, but siding with Israel would upset the balance of power with Palestine. The EU once floated the idea of reviewing economic aid to the latter. European diplomacy in the Middle East is powerless. One could say that it has reached a dead end. In the past, Switzerland, Scandinavia, and others have acted as peace mediators, and 30 years ago, in 1993, Norway succeeded in getting the Oslo Accords signed, where Israel and Palestine agreed to seek peace. However, the parties have never overcome their differences, and violence continues. The main influence on the situation in the Middle East comes either from powers outside the Middle East, Russia, the US and China, or from regional states like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Europe is currently unable to play any role there. Its presence in the Middle East has diminished. A former leader of an EU member state said in an interview, "We will persistently spread democracy and peace without war, but not through military force, but through diplomacy and dialogue." Such idealism, which underpinned European diplomacy, faced a third defeat. Russia, which had sought reconciliation with Ukraine, introduced troops into its territory, and China, which had tried to promote democracy through economic exchanges, became more authoritarian. In Palestine, which had been in dialogue for years and supported economically, the unifying force of the mainstream Fatah, Movement for the National Liberation of Palestine, one of the main parties of the State of Palestine, foreign media note has dwindled. It was replaced by the armed group Hamas. The approach of promotion, based on high ideals, was useful during European integration, but it does not work in today's world. European models, such as the Renaissance, are often viewed negatively, as they are seen by many as imposing values. The harsh reality is that hegemonism threatens to spread around the world, and that dialogue alone will not solve the problem. A survey of Middle East policy officials in Europe found that many believe that Israel can weaken Hamas through harsh retaliation, but that this is not the way to solve the Palestinian problem. The prevailing view is that Israel's economy will remain high-tech, although the risks of a slowdown will increase in the short term due to psychological turmoil. The commercial capital of Tel Aviv is somewhat battle-ready. There are many apartment blocks with bunkers. European politics are affected by two things. Firstly, even if a large-scale armed conflict is resolved, a prolonged period of regional instability will lead to an increase in the number of migrants and refugees from the Middle East to EU countries. Second, armed action in Ukraine and war in Israel. And these countries are close to Europe, will create a vague sense of uncertainty among old world voters. Both of these factors create favorable conditions for strengthening the position of far-right parties. Europe is largely aware of the political risks looming both inside and outside the continent, including Trump's re-election in the 2024 US presidential election. The post-Cold War period, when the Iron Curtain fell and peace prevailed, is now over. A frightening sense of uncertainty is spreading in Europe. Author Seigo Akagawa